It's Wednesday, August 19th, and this is now on H&N.
No parties larger than 5 coming together.
Instead of a broad shutdown, Governor Ige and Mayor Caldwell opt to impose further restrictions on gatherings. Meanwhile, the restart of tourism is delayed once again.
We will be making that announcement in time so that the hospitality industry would have the time they need to staff up and begin to support the pre-travel testing program.
Despite the COVID crisis, RIMPAC kicks off in Hawaii waters.
The only real way to really address the threat of coronavirus from RIMPAC is to just cancel RIMPAC completely.
These stories, plus I have an exclusive interview with a member of the White House Coronavirus Task Force. That's coming up on This Is Now. Good afternoon. Thank you for watching This Is Now on this Wednesday. I'm Jonathan, your director and producer, alongside Ashley. We're going to begin today with another big uptick in cases that are being reported by the state's Department of Health.
Hey everyone, health officials are reporting another patient with COVID-19 has died, bringing Hawaii's death toll to 42. DOH is also reporting 261 new COVID-19 cases today. The breakdown by county shows 234 are on Oahu, 20 are on Maui, and 7 are on the Big Island. Officials say there are almost 3,600 active cases statewide. Now, this is now exclusive about the search for a vaccine and the White House's response to the pandemic. Jonathan just spoke with Dr. Stephen Hahn, the Commissioner of the Food and Drug Administration and one of the nation's top health officials.
All right, Dr. Hahn, the push for vaccines only intensifying. The president has said earlier this month that a vaccine could be coming by Election Day. Is that at all realistic? What's the timeline you're looking at?
Well, Jonathan, at FDA, what we do is we look at the data when it's available to determine whether a vaccine is safe and effective. So when the data comes from these large phase 3 trials, we'll take a look at them and make a decision. You may know that my background is as a cancer doctor, and I used to tell my patients all the time, and I'm going to tell you now, I don't have a crystal ball. I cannot predict the future. I think we've done a tremendous job at this country in terms of expediting vaccine development. When the data are available, we'll look at the data. We will make the absolute best decision regarding safety and effectiveness. And I want your viewers to know we have incredibly high standards for vaccine safety and effectiveness, and we will use those standards in our decision making.
Well, you are privy to talking to a lot of the manufacturers and the researchers. What's the big headline you see out there that you can share with us? Who's looking the most promising, and what's the timeline for that? I know you say you have no crystal ball, but you do have that insight and that knowledge from those folks.
Yeah, so FDA is required by law to keep confidential commercial information confidential. So I can't talk specifics, but I can tell you in general what's happening. So we have over 50 vaccine manufacturers at FDA with applications. 6 of them have given what we call safe to proceed, which means they're allowed to go to clinical trials, and they're in a variety of stages of development. 2 of them are in phase 3, which is the final step in the development process. Those are the large clinical trials. Each of them will have around 30,000 volunteers, and they'll be able to tell us data about the safety and the effectiveness of the vaccine. They are well on their way. They have been for the last month, and we expect accrual to finish relatively soon, within the next several weeks to month. Once that's done and all the volunteers have been accrued in those trials, then we wait for the data, and I'll use the term mature, so that we can see exactly when they get to the point where we have enough information around safety and effectiveness. But Jonathan, one thing that's really important, we're not just waiting for those data to come in. We're working with the manufacturers on a regular basis. We're getting data every week, and we're looking at it to make sure that the studies are being done in a way that allows us to make the decision that we need to make.
Now, critics of the FDA point to the approval of the malaria drug hydroxychloroquine. Earlier this year, it had to be reversed because of safety issues, and it was proven that it ended up not working. How can the public and our viewers be reassured that any vaccine that's approved will not go through the same process of being reversed?
So we're in extraordinary times, Jonathan. This is an emergency, a public health emergency, and we have an authority called Emergency Use Authorization, which is different from our normal approval process. It's what we used for hydroxychloroquine. So I'll give you an analogy. You're a doctor in the emergency room. You see a patient who's sick. You meet that person, you talk to them, you're getting some information from them, you do a few tests. You need to make a decision in that emergency room to do the best you can to save their life. An hour later, 2 hours later, 10 days later, whatever, while the patient's still in the hospital, you get more information. You revise your treatment decision. That's what patients expect of doctors. That's what the American public expects of FDA. So when we made our decision about hydroxychloroquine, when we made our decision about other therapeutics, we made it based upon the data available. When new data come in, we change that decision. And we're not going to be afraid and go back and reverse a decision. We're going to always follow the science and the data. FDA is science in action. We take the data and the science, and we then make the decisions based upon that. And in a fast-moving pandemic, we are always going to look at updating those data on a regular basis and looking back at our decisions.
Given that we here in the Aloha State are an island community, is there any sort of hurdles that you could see us facing to distributing the vaccine? And we sort of have limited healthcare resources as well. Do you have any insight on that?
Well, the Centers for Disease Control, CDC, NIH, National Institutes of Health, and the U.S. government, Health and Human Services Department, are going to be in charge of allocation of the vaccine. And they have taken into consideration many, many factors, including geography and location. And so our commitment in the U.S. government is to make sure that we have ready access for all Americans in whom it's appropriate to give the vaccine. And there are special considerations for states like Hawaii that might not be true for Virginia or another state in the nation. And so we need to take that into account. We need to make sure that vulnerable populations are accounted for and that this vaccine is given to all of those in whom it ends up being appropriate.
All right, and on that note, we're seeing a bit of a surge here in our state. You're getting behind the scenes, seeing a lot of closed door meetings with the coronavirus task force. Is there any talk about what's happening here in Hawaii? What are people at the federal level saying about our state?
Absolutely, there's insight. I can tell you that, first of all, we meet regularly, both as doctors on the task force, but the task force itself, and we look at the data on a daily basis across all states. And then once a week, we provide, the task force does, Dr. Birx in particular, a very detailed account of every state in the union, including Hawaii. And it provides a snapshot of what's going on in that state at that time. So we're keeping a very close eye. And we are aware of the potential for surge in cases in Hawaii. We know that you've recently taken some measures for mitigation. And here's the important point, Jonathan, and something that I think is important for everyone to hear, and that is there is a path forward. Safety is the top concern, and the common sense public health measures, which you all know about, wearing a mask, social distancing, avoiding large crowds, washing your hands frequently, and protecting the most vulnerable. Those are the pillars of this common sense public health approach. And Jonathan, one of the things that we've seen in the Sunbelt states across the country is that these measures work. So it gives me great hope that if we institute them, it's our path forward. It's the way to avoid a significant outbreak. And I'm very certain and confident that the people of Hawaii and the leaders of Hawaii will be able to do that.
All right, Dr. Hahn, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Jonathan.
New restrictions for Oahu go into effect at 12:01 a.m. and will last at least 28 days. Billy V has the details.
Thank you very much. Down here in Waikiki, the flowers smell wonderful, the sun is out bright, the winds are blowing, the surfers are all in the water, but Paradise has some new rules. This is all new regulations, there's no new closures, but let's tell you about this, and most of this is to go ahead and reduce gatherings. So the limit will be 5 people in a group as opposed to 10, whether indoors or outdoors. Restaurants cannot have groups larger than 5 at a table. Same for outdoor attractions like water parks and commercial boating. Museums and movie theaters have to adhere to those rules too. Businesses are being asked to let employees work from home or on staggered shifts. The mayor of the city and county of Honolulu, Kirk Caldwell, had some thoughts on these new regulations.
We went back and forth quite a bit over the past week with the governor and others, health professionals, about whether we do the scalpel or the hammer. Scalpel or the hammer. And what we've concluded is everyone does their part. If everyone can be cautious, then maybe we can avoid a total shutdown, which we don't want to do. But, lives are at stake.
Other regulations include no social gatherings at the workplace are allowed. The mask mandate is also expanding to all shopping malls and spiritual services. Singing and wind instruments are also not allowed at those services. But malls, gyms, churches, and restaurants can stay open while bars, parks, trails, and beaches, like here in Waikiki, remain closed. You can only cross the beach if you're headed to the water for recreation. From Waikiki, I'm Billy V for This Is Now.
For many companies and unemployed workers, the big news that came out of yesterday's state COVID-19 announcement was what the governor said about travel. Here's Howard Dykes with more on that.
It won't help hotels or tour companies that the Trans-Pacific quarantine rule remains in effect. We understandably focus on the new rules for you announced by Mayor Caldwell, but Governor Ige also said he's extending the quarantine at least through September, and that means the tourism coma will last 6 months.
We will continue to monitor the conditions here in Hawaii, as well as key markets on the mainland to determine the appropriate start date for the pre-travel testing program.
You can absolutely expect more layoff notices and more permanent closures by businesses, some of which until now thought they might make it. The warn notices already issued by several major employees might have been trimmed if the economy got better, but that's now less likely.
The number of cases in Hawaii remains high, threatening to overwhelm hospitals. This month alone, the state has had more than 3,000 new infections, with large outbreaks at Oahu Community Correctional Center and in the Pacific Islander community. But State Health Director Bruce Anderson says there are signs that we could have seen the peak of this second wave.
Over the last week, we've seen a surge in cases that is dramatic. We've had over 200 cases, I think, steadily through most of last week, and just over the last few days, we're starting to see the numbers drop a bit. I would not say we're through this by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I think we're in this for a long haul. But I am cautiously optimistic that the numbers are going the right way. It's better than going the other way, and they've been going down for a while.
As we told you earlier this week, RIMPAC is underway, but a lot of people are not happy that it's happening during this global pandemic. Casey Lund reports.
And this year's RIMPAC has been sized down considerably to just 10 nations, around 5,300 personnel. And the Navy assures the public that all the U.S. servicemen and women do have to go into a 14-day quarantine and pass a COVID-19 test with negative results. Still, the group Cancel RIMPAC Coalition has some concerns and say the military during this pandemic is knowingly endangering the lives of the people of Hawaii.
This pandemic has been very difficult for everyone to get under control. We saw that with the USS Roosevelt in Guam, the many sailors that had to disembark from that ship due to the outbreak there. We know that these Navy ships are incubators for the virus. And so as well as their plans may be, or attempts may be at planning, you can't really plan for these kind of things, and it's very dangerous. The bases aren't closed networks, so local people still work on the bases and troops can still come on and off the base. And so there's still the possibility of community transmission and spread. And the only real way to really address the threat of coronavirus from RIMPAC is to just cancel RIMPAC completely.
On Sunday, the group staged a mobile protest convoy that started at Sand Island. It included activists from Veterans for Peace and the Golden Rule Peace Boat. The convoy made its way to Pearl Harbor and then continued to Fort DeRussy via Nimitz Highway. This is in part the message from the U.S. Navy about its plans to keep sailors and the community safe during the pandemic and the exercise.
A 14-day quarantine and negative COVID-19 test were required for all U.S. ships who traveled to Hawaii. If needed, U.S. ships will be able to conduct COVID-19 tests at sea. Similarly, some of our partner nation ships will have testing capability. There is no plan to bring COVID-19 specimens ashore. If an emergency medical situation arises that exceeds a ship's ability to resolve, on-island military facilities have sufficient capability to medically support RIMPAC 2020. We do not plan to use any local healthcare resources.
And despite those assurances from the Department of Defense, the group Cancel RIMPAC Coalition says they'll remain vocal throughout the month of August while these exercises are going on, speaking out about the fact that they simply don't want war exercises happening in the waters around Hawaii at all. Reporting near Pearl Harbor, I'm Casey Lund for This Is Now.
Southwest Airlines said it's trimming the number of flights it will offer this fall. It comes after what the carrier described as a, quote, modest improvement in August bookings. The airline says its number of available seats will be down 40% in September compared to a year ago. Southwest previously said September capacity would only drop 20 to 25%. There will also be reduced capacity in October, with available seats down 40 to 50%. Southwest said the fall schedule capacity is due to inconsistency in passenger demand and booking trends. Apple becomes the first U.S. company to be worth $2 trillion. Richard Quest tells us how the tech giant thrived during the pandemic.
It's an extraordinary achievement for Apple to have reached this high valuation at the same time as the world is in recession and suffering from a pandemic. But when you think about how it's done it, it makes sense. All the devices that we've been buying and using, all the apps that we've been using during the time we've been working from home and spending that much longer online. The shares of Apple are up more than 50% this year alone. The investors feel tech giants like Apple, Microsoft and Amazon are good places to park money during the crisis. Apple is now the world's largest listed company. It overtook Saudi Aramco in early August, a sign of how the pandemic has hurt energy demand and how bigger tech has overtaken big oil. Apple's massive size comes at a price. Increased pressure from regulators. Tim Cook testified before Congress in July and argued the company is not a monopoly.
Our goal is the best, not the most. In fact, we don't have a dominant share in any market or in any product category where we do business.
And so the catch-22. Apple is facing possibly further regulation and antitrust action. At the same time, we're demanding more and more of the company's products because it seems we're going to be working from home longer and there'll be no let-up in demand. Richard Quest, CNN, New York.
Oh man, Apple has come a long way since our day, right? Remember the green screen, Apple 1 and 2, Carmen Sandiego, Oregon Trail.
Yep. Don't get dysentery.
I know, I won't. And Richard Quest likes his modern Apple products. Did you see the crack and the fingerprints all over his screen?
Covered.
Love that guy. Well, hey guys, we got to get to some breaking news happening right now, a traffic alert.
That's right. This is in Waipahu. This is some viewer photos sent in. This is happening at Kahuahele and Kahualena Street in Waipahu. You can see a big water main break, a big geyser shooting out of the street. HPD is on scene over there.
Look at that. Now let's get a check of your weather. Here's Guy Hoggy.
How's it on this Wednesday? This morning we're tracking this batch of moisture approaching the Big Island. They could see some heavy rain later tonight, the Big Island that is, and then slowly that moisture is going to move up the island chain. So tomorrow is when we expect most of the rain for much of the state, although the rain will likely be spotty. Most computer models are saying most of the moisture will pass us by to the south. And with those trade winds blowing, that should help move the rain along at a good pace, and that will limit the rainfall totals, the rainfall accumulation, also limit the flooding threat. But remember, there's still the possibility for heavy rain starting tomorrow, even a possibility for thunderstorms for the east end of the state. But until that happens, we'll have lots of sunshine today. Very little rain is expected today, although by tonight, that moisture will be approaching the Big Island. So if you live in an area that is flooded before on the Big Island or on Maui, take precautions before the rain moves in. Now the surf's looking up today, slightly bigger on south and east shores than yesterday. And then over the weekend, we could see east swell coming in from Hurricane Genevieve. And again, we could get coastal flooding this afternoon because of that extremely high tide. So lots of sunshine today, increasing showers tonight and tomorrow, and to some extent Thursday. Again, most of the rain will favor the Big Island and Maui, and then drier conditions as we head into the weekend. Keep it here on Hawaii News Now. We'll have all your severe weather updates.
I saw a tiger, and a tiger saw a man. This is what the internet's talking about. My singing and Tiger King. There's big Tiger King news. Sorry for that. I always promise I won't sing, but I keep doing it. Sorry, guys. The Oklahoma Zoo, where Tiger King took place, the documentary on Netflix, is closing to the public. That's after it lost its federal license. It was suspended. The USDA says it suspended the license for the park and its owner, Jeffrey Lowe, because it found multiple violations of animal welfare, some of those repeat violations. Lowe and the previous owner, Joe Exotic, who that great song comes from, were the focus of the documentary Tiger King. We all know that. A post on the Facebook page for the park says it will be used as a somewhat of a TV set, from what it sounds like, for future content regarding Tiger King. Yeah.
They're milking that Tiger King.
I know. I started to rewatch it. No lie.
You rewatched it?
Third time.
Oh, Jonathan.
Third time.
I know. No.
And that's why I can't get the song out of my head.
Well, you need this. So this is what I found. If you're too lazy to look for something new to watch on Netflix, or you're just overwhelmed with all of the content out there, well, help is here. You can now let Netflix stream titles to you at random with the new Shuffle Play feature the company is testing. Like the automatically curated list of so-called For You titles, Shuffle Play picks content based on your viewing history or playlist. But the feature goes a step further, actually playing the selection. So if you don't like what you see, you can just skip ahead to the next title. And the streaming service built the feature for indecisive viewers who don't quite know what they want to watch.
I'm definitely indecisive. I think we've talked about this before. Sometimes I spend more time looking than watching, right?
I do that all the time.
Yeah, and then once you find the thing, you're like, oh, so satisfying, going to bed.
Yes, watch all the previews and then you just go to bed.
What's up with Mariah Carey these days?
Oh man, Mariah Carey is dropping a new album soon, you guys, and it will include all of her greatest hits. Now, the singer announced on Twitter that the album, called The Rarities, will be out on October 2nd. It will feature 32 tracks. Some of them are new, like a single featuring Lauryn Hill called Save the Day, but the album will also include some of Carey's classics like Always Be My Baby and Hero.
No Mariah Carey song for us?
Oh, I thought that's Jonathan's job.
Tomorrow, guys, tomorrow. Let's move on to Lebron James, because he's showing off what's ahead in the new Space Jam movie. Check out the new uniform. Yeah, it's a little bit more colorful than the original one that Michael Jordan wore. You know, and this movie, that actually took place in 1996, the original.
And I can't believe you've never seen it.
I've never seen it. But Space Jam New Legacy is expected in theaters next summer.
Has a great soundtrack too.
Oh yeah, I do remember some of those. More singing, Ashley.
Right, and let's go to some good news now. Some nurses and other frontline healthcare workers will soon be walking down the aisle in style thanks to a bridal shop in Virginia Beach. Here's Elise Preston.
It took a pandemic for many people to recognize the heroic efforts of healthcare workers. And now one bridal shop in Virginia is finding another way to honor the women on the front lines of COVID-19.
She put the veil on and I started crying,
Taylor Bass is one of 75 medical workers getting a free designer wedding dress from Ava Clara Couture Bridal in Virginia Beach.
We need to be giving them the utmost support and appreciation because they are putting themselves out there. They're the real heroes.
Owner Alex Fleer feels it's the least she can do for engaged women who have risked their lives for months. A number of designers helped with donations. Some gowns are worth up to $4,000.
I feel very beautiful. I feel kind of poofy. Just took the weight off our shoulders, and I'm very appreciative for the opportunity.
Over 600 medical workers from all over the country applied for the giveaway. Elise Preston, CBS News, New York.
Love that.
That is a fantastic idea.
And what a great way to end the show today. Guys, that's going to do it for This Is Now on this Wednesday. We made it halfway through this week. Don't forget we have a brand new Instagram account, This Is Now HNN, and you can always find our podcast anywhere you find your podcast.